right. So, welcome to the No Love Podcast, where we decrease tomorrow's divorce rate today by teaching singles and couples alike how to experience love on purpose and not by chance. I am your host, Edward L. Fairley, accompanied by my wonderful and lovely co-host, Michelle Larkin. Michelle, say hi to the people.
Hi, world.
It has been almost a month, and I'm sorry, not sorry. I'll explain what that means. The first of the past 3 weeks was technical difficulties, and because of that, I did not go live. The other 2 weeks, I always make decisions based off of priorities, God, family, business, and those priorities came into play on those past Thursdays, which was a no-brainer for me that we were not going to have the show. As far as priorities for Michelle, that's why we are late this evening. I see Tila. Now, let me tell you something about this young lady, Tila. She's been waiting to do a live. We talk offline about this show. So it's good to see that she's here. Hey, Tila. We'll be interacting in a moment. I was just giving a little backstory as to why it's been almost a month. If we would have missed today's date, it would have been 4 weeks. But again, we're doing this live late because just like the reason why I did not do the last 2 weeks is the same reason why we're late this evening. Michelle, she has priorities that she needed to take care of, but she decided that she wanted to go live with me today because I definitely wanted to go live. I do miss you all, but again, it was a no-brainer for me. God, family, business, and those priorities came into play as of the last 2 weeks. But we are back. We are live. We're energetic. We are excited about today's topic. It's a necessary topic. Tila just said, hey, she laughed. The topic today is why you keep losing the argument. I'm going to repeat that. I probably said it incorrectly, but it's pretty much here, why you keep losing the argument. And I'm going to tell you the answer, and then we'll dive into how to overcome that throughout the show. But the answer to why you keep losing the argument, hey, Miss Osborne, I'm going to start just waving at people. Some people might feel creeped out hearing their name over the line. But hey, Shantae. Hey, Clarissa, good to see you all. But yeah, the topic of tonight is why you keep losing the argument. And the reason why you keep losing the argument is because you are trying to win an argument instead of having a conversation. And I'm going to elaborate on what that means so that you can better understand and receive what it is that I'm saying. But the reason why you keep losing an argument is because you are trying to win an argument as opposed to have a conversation. Let me first, I like to define, inspect what you expect. So let's define what an argument is. An argument is basically two narrow or closed-minded people trying to force their personal views on one another. That's it. That's pretty much what it is. Like two people who are intentionally trying to make another person agree with their point of view and receive their thought process and say, hey, you know what, you're right, I'm wrong, or what have you, as opposed to having a conversation, which would actually destroy the ability for for an argument to be had. And a conversation is simply exchanging information and learning from one another. So when you're having a conversation, you're literally exchanging information and interested in what that other person has to say, and vice versa. So you two are sharing information and not necessarily trying to force each other to adopt each other's point of view. They're just sharing concepts, ideas, information, and even comments about things that they've been entertained by, whether it be a TV show, movie, sports, politics, anything. So with that being said, before I even dive into how you can overcome the loss by making it a conversation, what are your thoughts about the intro so far, Michelle, in reference to what an argument is as well as what a conversation is?
Actually, I've been having these types of exchanges over the past couple of days, I think the difference between an argument and a conversation can be around the emotions that are generated and the intensity of the exchange as relates to emotion. Because you can have an intense exchange of ideas and be in agreement, or even be working toward agreement and not have the anger or the residual negativity that comes from an argument, so to speak. So I think that the difference is in the emotional kind of reaction and residual cloud. I mean, an argument tends to bring up a negative connotation. An intense exchange, some people having fun with that. Like, they're just passionate and they're loud and they just want to, you know, like, but that doesn't mean they're having an argument. It may look like an argument to somebody, but they're not walking away from that feeling angry or uncomfortable or unresolved. But an argument tends to be a difference of opinion that has some emotional connection or negativity attached to me.
No, I actually I agree with you 100%. It's always interesting, and as we unpack this and go deep into it and how to kind of take power, because I mean, the whole thing is people feeling like they lost power because someone did not agree with them, and it all actually stems from insecurities and just not being sure of yourself, and it's like looking for the reassurance of your ideas or philosophies by getting validated by someone else. Where if you are, go ahead.
I think go ahead. I say that I go that the power part of your comment and the feeling of loss or needing to prove something is a huge predicate of, or indicator of, whether this is going to turn into a conversation or an argument. Like, if you're coming in with this need, then you're going to likely to be more sensitive and start with defense rather than, as we have talked about a couple of times over, right? Coming in with an open heart and open mind, expecting the best, even if it's an intense exchange, which is not always the case. But I have to say that the way you answer a conversation. And here's the other thing, which I know we're going to talk about, is your triggers. If you got your stuff all on your sleeve and somebody says something wrong and it hits this, you are off and running. Like,
well, see, and you got on me about this, so I'm going to make sure that I do it before I have to hear it offline. As far as the no love triangle, this would be the foundation. This would be the base. And that goes to loving yourself, which if you're coming into an exchange with self-doubt or insecurities or low self-esteem, that would put you in a predicament where you feel the need to prove yourself. So because of that, when you are having that exchange and that person is not agreeing with you, which is so funny to me, because in a lot of people's minds, their thought process is, I am not understood until I am agreed with. And because of that, they're fighting for the feeling of being understood, when in actuality, it's possibly or possible that they are understood. They're just not agreed with. But
and it's disagreeing with you, not valuing you. Like, you know, like, just because I don't agree with you, does that mean I don't value you? Does that mean you're nothing? Like, I don't. Again,
like you and I've had conversations on multiple occasions, and we've already discussed them along this podcast. There's been times where we've had a disagreement, and you just were like, "Well, we're done," and I'm like, "No, I love you."
You hit the button. You hit the button, and I had it out there on my sleeve, and you went, "Yup, I hit it," and I was like,
"Yeah," and there's so many people who encounter me or join my circle or have recently joined my circle, and they just don't know what to do with that. I'm in business meetings. What's so crazy to me is I sit back and I watch, because I'm always analyzing people. I love people. I love puzzles, and people are the most complex puzzles. So I like to kind of figure where their triggers come from, what causes them, and what causes their responses or thought processes. How you doing, Mr. Greg Shavers? So I it's so common for people to not know how to receive me when I interrupt them when they try to have an argument with me. And I just say, well, I was just sharing just to share. What you do with what I share is up to you. I'm not trying to force my views upon you. I heard exactly what you said. And I even take the time, which we'll go into that later on.
It comes across like you don't care. It comes across like you don't care.
That sounds like a personal attack. But
it's not true. But
it's definitely not true. It's just I don't have the time or the energy to try to, for one, make you feel validated. That's your job. Two, if I agree with you, I'll tell you. Or if I see where you're coming from, I've already shared it. But people get so caught up in trying to get someone to jump on their side that they miss out on the opportunity to realize that they were understood. And also because of their belief that in order for you to be understood, you have to be agreed with, that prevents them from having a connection or even being able to realize that they've been around or among a person that has taken the time to empathize with them and even have compassion on them due to their thought processes or their beliefs. So let's get into how you can go about diffusing an argument, gaining your power back, but transitioning it into a conversation, which is so powerful and it's so productive because arguments are not productive. You have two people that end up just dismissing one another, so angry and frustrated. And the evidence is in the fact that like you felt that we would be over when we disagree with one another. Yet I was able to say, well, no, I'm talking about what are we doing tomorrow? Are we meeting at are we meeting tomorrow?
I just had a conversation with my daughter last night, and we were the words that she was using were so cute. The words that she was using were making me feel like it was a great big space between us. And so I started to act like there was a space between us emotionally. And she was like, no, the words I was using meant this to me, but I can see where those words meant that to you. So we made an adjustment. So my perception and her perception were on the same page, but we were using language that. So I was like, you're right. Like, my language is important, and you can make an adjustment mid conversation. It's completely reasonable to make an adjustment mid conversation.
My big brother, Edward D. Fairley. I'm Edward L. Fairley, but that's my oldest flesh and blood brother. Good to see you, man. We'll talk later. Topic of discussion: why you always lose? Why are you always losing the argument? So I know we'll talk about that later, big brother. But yes, so unpacking this, going into how to transition it from an argument to a conversation. First of all, we've already defined what an actual argument is. An argument is. It is literally it is two narrow-minded or closed-minded people trying to force their personal views on one another. If you take that out of the equation, it's impossible for you to not have a conversation. And the way that you have a conversation is, as I stated before, to exchange information and learn from one another. The way that you can take the approach of transitioning an argument into an actual conversation is first, make the main objective to learn something from the person that you're talking to. Whether you agree with them or not, or agree with their opinion or not, make it your objective to learn something from them. And I don't mean, because I know how petty people can be, and I can be petty. I have been petty. So let me go ahead and address the petty thinkers in that statement. Yeah, listen to learn, to figure out how to take what they said, turn it around, and throw at them how dumb their thought process is, or all this stuff. Like, there's literally people who are listening to set the person up, trap them, and set them up in this web so that they can win an argument. No, I mean sincerely focusing on what it is that they're trying to say. Try to find, again, especially when we're talking about relationships, because we are typically talking about romantic relationships. If you start with the foundation of this person loves me and they would not want to harm me. So allowing that to allow for you to listen to them with the intent of learning what it is that they could be trying to get me to adopt from a loving standpoint in reference to their thought process on this particular subject matter. So listening within the object of learning something, it automatically shifts the whole dynamic of the exchange, because now you go from a teaching or forcing type posture to a student posture, which is, okay, tell me more. So before I even dive into that, do you want to go ahead and add to that, Michelle?
So you said an argument is two narrow-minded people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I just am curious as to why you use the word narrow-minded.
Because narrow implies that you can't see anywhere outside of how you're looking at that particular situation. You're not receiving any other thought process or possibility that what your thought process is, there could be something different. So narrow in the sense that you don't see any, your focus just like
singularly focused.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Connotation, right? So this is similar, right? So we're having this exchange, and my connotation of narrow went for a negative one of not smart. And what you really intended was to people that are singularly focused to the point of excluding other people's opinions or thoughts, and really just trying to drive home a point versus have an exchange.
And that's why I said narrow and closed-minded people. So I followed it with closed-minded when I said narrow-minded to kind of elaborate on what I meant by narrow-minded. It means your mind is closed. This is what my thought process is. I'm not open to receiving any other or new information about this particular thing. This is what it is. So that's what I mean by that. But if you are going into it with the thought process of learning something, that is automatically opening your mind to possibilities of learning something new, especially about the particular subject matter or topic at hand, which in turn will allow for you to be more relaxed and receptive to what they're saying, as opposed to taking their information like what's his name, the Black Panther, to get all of that information, to get the energy, to use all that energy.
The kinetic energy.
The kinetic energy.
And it bounces back and comes back and makes it back more.
Yeah. So yeah, when you shift your thought process in the objective of the interaction to learning something from that person, that automatically just maneuvers your whole setup, your psyche, your mannerisms. Go ahead, Michelle.
So what just popped into my mind when we referenced the Black Panther is, in the exchange, because there's an energy exchange is what's illustrated in the Black Panther's scenario, right? So once energy is put out, when it bounces back, it's absorbed, and then you can use it again, and then you bounce it back, and it keeps growing. But if you're coming at it from love, and honestly, even if an exchange is passionate and gets intense, it ought to grow love and connection because it's an exchange from a positive space. It really could be an intense conversation, could make you love this person more because they are being more transparent the more passionate they get.
Well, that's what makes it powerful, and that's what causes love to grow, because now instead of you trying to force your thought process on them, you're open to learning their thought process and also learning how their thought process, though it may be different from yours, may very well still be an expression of love, because you've now taken the time to listen and learn from how they view things through their eyes. But if you are trying to force your eyes on someone else's eyes, you in turn become blind to their eyes. And that causes you to lose any kind of opportunity for compassion, and your responses and everything like that reflect that, which we'll go into more depth in a moment.
Mm-hmm. And that sounds like the listen with an object of learning something must come from empathy. You got to have some empathy coming into the conversation. Like you said, being able to see it from their perspective, or just at least put yours down for a second and up while they're speaking to listen.
That's right. So basically what I'm saying is a narrow-minded or closed-minded person's main objective is to teach or force their point of view upon someone else so that they can feel right or, as I stated earlier, understood. Because I promise you, typically people who are trying to force someone to agree with them, that is their way of feeling understood, as opposed to just realizing that no one has to agree with you for them to understand you. So that in itself, again, allows for you to take power back by, as I stated with earlier, loving yourself, understanding yourself, knowing what you know, and even being so investigative that you even test or challenge your own thoughts to where you're able to be more open-minded and grow from others. So after you start with the thought process of being an open-minded learner of what the person may have to offer, the second component would be to listen to understand. Now, that is, I'm really going to have to unpack that, because a lot of people listen to, as I stated earlier, gain ammunition to align with their actual case. So they're not listening to necessarily better understand where you're coming from or what it is that you're saying. They're listening because they want to say, okay, I can use this against them. Now that goes with, see, that's exactly how many times you say, see, that's what I'm saying. If you like, when you get to a point where you are taking the information to actually align with your case, you're not listening to understand. You're listening just to provide yourself with the necessary ammunition or weapons to actually win this quote unquote war or battle. And the crazy thing about it is, if you really analyze that kind of thought process, it's not possibly coming from a place of love. The fact that you want to win and defeat that person in an exchange, that there's nothing loving about that way of thinking or an approach at all. If you want to get to a point where that person feels like they lost, or they're leaving with their head down, or like, man, he just beat me, or he just told me off, that is not a loving stance or expression at all if you get to the bottom of having that kind of thought process. So your motives in that moment are not loving at all if you're not listening to understand where that person is coming from. Anything you got with that, Michelle?
I'd like you to talk more about understand, because you mentioned it earlier, and that if you're trying to make sure somebody understands you, then you're trying to force your opinion. But if somebody doesn't agree with you, they still may understand you. So I wanted to unpack a little bit. From listening to understand, then I have to accept the fact that it's possible that the person may not agree with me, but that doesn't mean they don't understand me.
That's good. So the best way that I can answer that wonderful question, by the way, I can't stress this enough. This is why Michelle is here, because I wake up with my mind. I already know what I'm thinking, the thought process behind what I'm thinking, and even what I'm sharing. So Michelle, she forces me to break it down or unpack it even further, so that I can make sure that I'm not leaving a statement said or unsaid to where you all leave not understanding. And if you all feel the same way or have some questions, please, while you're live with us, type that in so I can unpack something that I said a little further. And even after the show, I'll gladly, which I typically don't do, but I'm going to say that, which will make me or force me to do it, I will go back to the comments and reply to the comments after the show.
An exchange.
Yeah. Most certainly. So at that wonderful question. So the best way to unpack or explain what I mean by understand is, okay, the evidence that you are listening to understand is that you can say back what it is that person said in your own words in a manner that they can receive it as you are understanding or listening to what they're saying. Not parroting what they said, but literally taking what they said to you and using your own words to share it back with them, and even trying to give an example, even going so far as to give an example of how much you really understand and can grasp what their viewpoint or thought process is in reference to that particular topic or subject or anything of that nature. If you cannot do that, you are not listening to understand. You're listening to take their words in the manner in which they shared it to actually use it against them. But when you're talking about coming from a place of empathy or compassion, you're literally able to unpack what it is that they're saying, even speak to the emotion that's behind it, and then share it back to them to help them better understand that, no, I'm listening to you. I'm hearing where you're coming from. I just don't agree with you.
So, but just if you're able to be with the presence of mind to do what you're talking about, it's highly unlikely that it's going to spiral out of control into some emotional exchange. Like you're saying, what you're saying is calm down.
That's the whole point. That is the whole point. Like, and that's what I'm saying.
Down. And I'm saying, if you hit my button, I'm not calm.
Exactly.
I'm already at 1,000.
And this is real, but at the same time, and this is what actually irks people, and people don't know how to receive it. Because I'm a button hitter. I'll hit a button.
Yes, Lord Jesus.
I will hit a button. But when they go off, I'm still in this mode right here. and I'm listening and I'll respond, because you can only have an argument with two people. I often say, if two people are arguing and one is the fool, you can't tell which one is the fool if you're on the outside looking in. So if I sit here and I go back and forth with you, and that's when we get to the point where I say, whoa. I'm not trying to force you to agree with what I'm saying. I've already shared. I heard what you had to say. I shared back. I apologize that offended you, but that is where I stand on this on this matter. And I'll slowly just leave. I'll go. I'll be like, well, if you're ready to talk, we can talk. Tila
just used this as an example earlier. Where you
Tila just replied, "Yes, you will." She's aligning with your head.
Amen. You said this earlier, how you and your wife could go, like, you give her a day or two, like, because I'm sure, like, you're going to have an exchange in 3 days, because 3 days. If I'm having an emotional exchange, you're sitting there going, I mean, I hear you, but like, I'm gonna need a couple days. I need to process. Let me write it down and come back to you. Let's go through point 1, 2, and 3. So what I was saying was, it's gonna take a couple days.
You're either having a conversation with me or you're not. I'm not doing the arguing. So we can talk, or you can get yourself together. But one thing that's true, and this is facts, and I want you all to take this note. This will be a #9 moment. You cannot speak emotion to a logical person, and you cannot speak logic to an emotional person, which is why I don't even waste my time trying to argue with someone, because when they're at an arguing space, they're not thinking at all. Everything that they're doing is based off of how they feel. So they're not comprehending, nor are they really coherent, and you cannot be both. You can't be emotionally high and logically high. You can only be one or the other. So I can understand where you're coming from. I can even articulate your thoughts and your feelings. But if you are in an emotional state, and I try to break it down to you, it's no different from me yelling to you in a foreign language that you do not speak to try to force you to understand what it is that I'm saying. It's not going to work. We have to both be level-headed and receptive to each other's words in order for any kind of productivity to evolve out of the exchange. Go ahead, Michelle.
Can you address the fact that if you can't speak emotion to a logical person and you can't speak logic to an emotional person, does that by default make an emotional person invalid? Or
No, not at all. Not at all, because you have to both feel and you have to be a thinker. Now, I have to tell people this often, quite often. Tila, I've had this conversation, her and I, about emotion. Like, emotion is what you are supposed to allow to cause you to think about why you feel whatever it is that you feel. It should never be the decision maker. It should make you investigate why you have that feeling, but your mind should make the decision. So, oh, that just pissed me off, or that made me hot, or that made me happy, or whatever. That is a trigger that your body is telling you to investigate with your mind as to where it came from. When you get to the root of it, now you can make a rational decision. But a lot of people typically make a decision based off of their emotion and then find out later that that was a bad decision because it was based off of emotion, as opposed to saying, well, that just made me mad. Let me step back and figure out what in the world caused that. And then from there say, wow, this is what caused it. That is not really smart, nor does that even make sense. Now I'm going to approach it, which is why that 3 days later, 1 day for you, after you go ahead and journal or what have you, your your whole thought process changes and we're able to talk. But you cannot be emotionally high and logically high at the same time. You can only have one or the other. It doesn't make one
flip between the two. I can attest that you can flip between the two. Like, I have been in intense conversations where it triggered an emotion and I had an emotional response that made me pause for a second and be like, I'm not necessarily taking back my emotional response, but let me pause for a second and help you understand where I was coming from.
Oh yeah,
because I might go to 1,000 and then be like, hold on 1 second. What I was really trying to say was, or what really made me go there was X, Y, and Z. Do you understand why that took me there?
Most certainly, yeah. But oftentimes, like I said, if we're responding to emotion, we can't even articulate it at that moment. And
it's a learned thing, and I think that's what's good about the podcast or having these conversations is it's once you're aware, you're responsible for what you're knowing, right? So and once you've tried it and it worked, it's more likely that you'll try it again because you get your point across. But you do have to take a risk to do something uncomfortable, which is talk about what you're really feeling.
Well, and this is, I mean, if you really think about it, this is why in anger management or what have you, they'll tell you to take deep breaths and things of that nature. It's literally it's transitioning you out of that emotional state, at that emotional state to bring you back to your mind. That's all it is. It's causing a paradigm shift in the moment and taking you out of one state to bring you back to a more conscious and logical other.
Great.
So that would be, so we went from listening to understand. We unpacked what understanding looks like and what it actually is. And I even put in my notes, understanding is not agreeing. Understanding is being open-minded enough to be able to see another person's point of view so clearly that you can empathize with their perspective, even if you disagree with him or her. Just to kind of go ahead.
Can you unpack?
I was about to say
almost. I mean, almost. Can you unpack disagree? Because we unpacked Understand, but can you unpack disagree? Because I jokingly said your disagreement looks like I don't care. But what is a healthy disagreement? What is a healthy expression of I disagree? I mean, saying I disagree like this, I disagree in the midst of some heated could trigger a whole different level of exchange because of how I'm interpreting the body language. But what is a healthy way to express I disagree?
Okay. Well, I don't necessarily say I disagree. I won't say that. I will. It will be implied.
Because that's a button. That's a button.
Yeah. It would be implied and understood. All right, so let me give an example of me understanding but disagreeing. Okay, so say, all right, this is the best way I can put it. In my mind, this is my thought process. And I've yet to find an alternate conclusion in my investigation. Everyone's right in their thinking. That sounds crazy, but everyone is right in their thinking. So when they think, everyone is right. So, but I can find someone that does something wrong, but their motive and their intent behind it to them is right. So I cannot agree with their action, but understand where they're coming from. Okay, so say if I deal with young men who are in some pretty terrible situations. So it's kind of like that statement, hurt people hurt people. So if there's someone who their cousin got shot in gang violence, because their cousin was so close to them, they go back and they retaliate. Because you shot my cousin, I shoot you. I don't agree with your response, but I understand your response. You love your cousin. That person hurt your cousin. So now you want to hurt them because they hurt and they took away your cousin. I understand. That response is only going to cause that other person whose family member or brother that you killed to feel the same way that you felt about their family member that that killed your cousin. And it's going to cause a cycle or circle that is never ending. Now you have to live with wondering who's looking for you, wondering who's trying to kill you, or wondering who's your enemy, and wondering if they're going to try today or tomorrow or whatever to get back at me. Again, I understand where you're coming from. I just don't agree with your thought process on how to get back. So you can understand and not agree with someone. That's it. And as far as like just disagreements and there's people that have weaknesses. I have weaknesses. So anytime that you have a weakness that is a strength of mine, typically people will judge you because of that. Me, on the other hand, I think about what my weakness is and I just align it with yours, and that causes me to be compassionate and understanding to you. I might not agree with what you do, but because I have my weaknesses, I understand where you're coming from. And I will gladly and be as transparent as I can, share what my weaknesses are when that person is struggling to help them realize I understand what you're going through and what you're doing, but I don't agree with what it is that you're doing. Does that help me share or break down the whole disagree but understand?
It does clarify how you can, it's like love the sin, hate the sinner. I mean, hate the sin, love the sinner thing, right?
That's what I was thinking in my mind, but not everybody would be able to catch it.
Understood.
Yeah.
Hate the action, love the person.
That's right.
But there's a part of disagreement, the term disagreement, and I'm just speaking from experience and haven't gotten over it, but I can relate to the fact that if somebody disagrees with you or says they disagree with you, it can make you feel less than or like a loss or like my position. Because again, we're coming to a table or a conversation thinking that I'm right. I'm thinking that I'm right. So if you disagree with me, that makes me wrong. And if I'm wrong, that makes me less valuable or less something or less than. And that can trigger a downward spiral of emotion as well. But I think what I was trying to get at, and I think you hit on, was when somebody doesn't agree, it doesn't mean it's a value judgment. It's I can love you and not agree with the way you expressed yourself or what you did, but it's not always all or nothing. It's not always if I disagree with this one thing, is not I disagree with you as a person. It's I disagree with, as a manager, I have this conversation often when I have to address someone about something they did at work. I don't like this work product. That doesn't mean you're a bad employee. I don't like this output, but we can work on that. But there's a lot of emotion attached to my identity and your ability to agree with me, or my sense that you agree with me is sometimes linked to how I feel about myself.
And this is why it's going back to the no love triangle. This is why it's imperative to fall in love with yourself and gain validation from yourself, because you are always going to be in a vulnerable and a very, very, what's the word I'm looking for? Just a very, very vulnerable state, and even a slave-like state when you are seeking validation that's external. So the best way I can put it is this: when you love yourself and you are affirmed and you are in a manner where you are confident yet you're humble enough to be able to be receptive to learning from someone else, you should be able to gather information, know that you're right, and whether they agree with you or not, move on. So if I sit here, and this is why I don't waste my time having an argument. If I sit here with you and I say 1 + 1 is 2, and you get irate and you say, no, it's not, it's 4. I'll say, okay, well, I might even take the time to just ask, well, why do you feel that it's 4? If you give me some crazy behind response, I'll say, oh, okay, well, if that's what you feel, that's fine, and I'll let it go. But I let it go knowing that I'm right. I don't need you to agree with me to be right. I mean, agree with me that I'm right in order for me to be right. And the problem with people who are insecure and don't love themselves and know themselves enough, or don't know what they know, and they seek validation from others, is it's not until they get someone to agree with them that they feel validated or feel that they're right. They're literally fighting with how they feel about themselves, not even really fighting with how you feel. They're really, really fighting with their personal issue. So you agreeing with me or getting upset that I don't agree with you or disagree with you, for lack of a better term, is a you problem. It's not a me problem. And when you get to a place where you love and know yourself enough to where you're not concerned or validated, which is why it does come across to you as you don't care, because I really don't care how you perceive me, nor do I care as to whether you agree with me. The only thing that I care about is my responsibility to share. And once I've done that, I've taken care of my responsibility. I've shared. What you do with what I share, that is up to you. And to be perfectly honest with you, the fruit of your decision making after I share is going to automatically be up to you as well. I don't have to sleep with that. I don't have to deal with it.
So take that back to the self-love leg of the triangle, because what you're saying is, I love the self-love and the working through of self-love and putting self first is not to the point of excluding someone else, but it's to the point of not allowing it to diminish your individuality and coming to the table actually strong. So it's okay if you disagree with me. It don't mean I'm still gonna be here, like, because
that's right.
I like me, I like you too. Like, okay.
Yeah. So all right. So going back to the triangle, the foundation of the triangle is to make sure that when you approach a relationship, you're coming to that person as enough, whole. And that's why I can't stand that statement or that phrase, my other half. Don't ever say that to me, by the way. If you don't know me, don't ask where my other half is. It will probably become a very interesting and awkward conversation.
It'll be an almost argument. It won't be an argument, though.
So if you come to the table as enough, the other person doesn't determine whether you're enough. So that robs them of the power of you feeling diminished or valued based off of their response or lack thereof. So again, people are seeking validation and affirmation from external things, which in turn causes them to fight because they don't feel validated. So they try to fight you in order to do so, when it's their job to feel validated, not another person's. So all they're doing is fighting a self issue that they have. And that's why people can't get a rise out of me, because I'm like, in the grand scheme of things, I love you, but you don't matter when it comes to my value and my worth. Your thought process about me does not matter. Who I believe in and who died for me, that robs you of any kind of validation that you could give me. I know and understand what my worth is. And it doesn't, which will transition to the other portion of this, because we're definitely not done unpacking how to transition this into a conversation so that you can gain the power back. But in the grand scheme of things, and I see you writing notes, because some of this, it sounds bad, like, yo, I don't care about how you feel about me. But if you love yourself, that should be your thought process. Of course, you want someone to love you, but whether they love you or not should not determine whether you feel loved. That is a very, very dangerous place to be in when you are seeking love from an external place. That is your job. That is no one else's job but you, but to feel validated, loved, and affirmed. That's not anyone else's job. When someone loves you, they do it, but it's not their job to do it for you to have it. Go ahead, Michelle.
I'm gonna sum it up because I know you want to go to the next piece.
You're fine.
Which is that not caring does not mean the topic doesn't matter. So
that's correct.
What we're saying is that your self-worth is not in question in the midst of a heated conversation because you love yourself. And that doesn't mean that if the topic is money, or this bill needs to get paid, and one person says it doesn't need to be paid, and the other person says it does need to be paid, and the electricity is going to get cut off. Like, the issue matters. The issue matters, but that how we're conversating or exchanging about this, my self-value shouldn't come onto the table. And we ought to be able to have a conversation to get to resolution without it making a stab at my heart and my self-worth.
So that's exactly what I mean when I say making your main objective to learn something from a person you're talking to, whether you agree with his or her opinion or not. Because now I've learned, since you brought up the whole paying a light bill and light bill going off, I've learned your priorities. So it might not be I might not have learned something great about you. And again, I definitely might not agree with you, but I've learned something from you. And I'm going to take that for what it is. Like, there's so many times where I have to have these conversations, like, take what they said at face value. Don't add to it. Don't change from it. Like, at that particular moment, that was not smart. You chose to go shopping or whatever and not pay that phone bill or that light bill. That wasn't smart. And then you have a person that replies to that, well, oh, so now I'm dumb. No. I didn't say that. I said in that particular situation or that circumstance, that was not a smart thing to do. So in that area, you might have some opportunity. You might have some growth or whatever. That is not an attack to your character. That's an attack to that particular situation and that decision. But again, if you have insecurity issues, you can't receive that for what it is. And the crazy thing about it is people that are arguing about that and the lights get cut off, and the person who contributed to the fact that the lights got cut off, they still don't receive the fact that they are contributed to it because they're so caught up in the fact that they got
hurt my feelings.
Yeah, you hurt my feelings. Like,
but
yo,
I don't care about the light. The way you said it hurt my feelings.
That's crazy.
Arguing in the dark.
Exactly. So
what's more important?
You definitely, and this is why I'm glad you said that. This is why it's imperative to know that you're right, so that you can now make a decision based off of what you know and not conform to their thought process or their philosophy. You got to take care of what you need to take care of, whether you love the person or not. And this is why it's dangerous to seek validation from that external person, because now you might conform to their ways just to appease them. But
yeah, we all living in the dark.
Ruin yourself.
Because I don't want to hurt their feelings. So I'm going to just not pay the bill because I don't want to have this argument.
Exactly. So that's crazy. That's crazy. And that is the result of making a decision based off of an emotion, not your head. So let's go ahead and transition. But I'm glad that you brought that up, because all it did was bring the conversation home, and with that example, wonderful example, by the way. So the third or the next component would be to intentionally converse with questions instead of making statements. So the best way to realize as to whether you're trying to have a conversation or have an argument is if your statements are statements and not questions. If you really have on a learning hat, if you really have on a thinking or getting clarity hat, you'll be spending more time asking questions than you will be doing sharing statements. Only a person that is teaching or trying to get someone to adopt their philosophies or thought processes are talking at you. A person that's trying to understand you is asking you questions. Hey, what do you mean by that? Tell me more. Remember how I said, could you share how you came to the conclusion that 1 + 1 was 4? Now, this part of the interaction is oftentimes where people get frustrated, and it's actually a compliment to me, because it just means that now you're thinking about what you're saying. And what people typically do is when they're speaking from emotion, they are wired and they're going in. And I'm like, okay, well, please tell me more about what you're saying. Explain to me why you feel that way. And they typically can't do it. And it's like, but you expect
me about how I'm feeling. Listen to what I'm saying. Don't ask me about how I'm feeling. That's obvious.
So I'm like, how did you come to that conclusion? Or why do you feel that 1 + 1 is 4? Could you explain to me, break it down so that I could do that?
Last time I saw 1 + 1, there was a 4 next to it. I don't know what you saw, but I saw a 4 next to it. And you're like, but there's no logic to that.
Yeah.
Trust that.
So, and then I'll say, okay, well, the way that I came, since you don't want to share, or you're having the way that I came up with.
I didn't even critique it. The last time I saw 1 + 1 next to each other, there was a 4. I didn't do no math. I saw it. Okay. I Googled it. And
Got it. Well, I just want to. I just want to. We're having this conversation. I just want to better understand what causes you to feel the way that you feel. I can share that the reason why I came up with 2 is because 1 + 1, like if I put up one finger and I add another finger, that's 1, and then another 1.
Now you're making me feel crazy. Why are you slowing? Why are you talking slow?
Why am I talking slow?
Now you're making me feel like I'm crazy.
Like, because I'm dealing with somebody that's slow. No, please don't say that. That will cause an argument. But you can think it. You can think it. It's some things that I think.
Edit, filter, comma, pause.
But if you find that you are speaking in statements, typically you are engaging in an argument. If you are asking questions, you are really trying to understand where that person is coming from, and hopefully find a common ground, and even, as I stated earlier, get to a place where you can articulate in a manner that shares that you understand their thought process, their feelings, and where their passion is coming from, to where you can empathize with them, but not necessarily agree with them. Anything you want to add to that?
Calm down. Just calm down. When you feel it coming up, and you get your heat on, you start to get a little warm, just calm down. When your voice starts to get shrill, like mine does periodically, damn. And I promise you, this is like the best trick. If you drop your voice an octave, the other person starts to go, what?
Yeah.
Just drop it 1 octave. If you, but I really, and then they just calm down for a second. It does
Yeah.
work.
But at the same time, it literally, you talking about stripping someone of emotion.
Just come.
Doing that, people, what happens is they're thinking like, why aren't you going at me the way that, like, why aren't you matching my volume? So it makes them think to themselves, what is going on here? Now, so because of that, now they've shifted from emotion to thinking, and they want to understand, well, why aren't you? So that is a good place to have them, and that is where it's good time to start asking them the necessary questions to transition it into an actual conversation.
Yeah, like it's true. Like you could just even start with, even in the heat, like even if you're catching yourself and you're already at 1,000, the other person's at 1,000, and you're like, I don't like this. It's reasonable to just stop and go, why are we having a conversation at this level?
Yeah.
But that brings it all the way down. Even just that pause will just give yourself a breather.
Yeah. It was 2 weeks ago. There was a crowd of people arguing, and I'm like, what are y'all doing? First of all, this environment is not the place for that. Y'all need to go find somewhere that is not with all of this audience that y'all have in front of you. But I said, can I ask y'all a question? While they were arguing, yelling, I said, what's the objective of the conversation?
I don't know now because I'm already
nobody could answer that. Which goes to show that even if you share something that makes sense, because there's no objective, you're never going to get to the actual end in the first place. Like if you go to a meeting with an objective, you don't even know whether the actual meeting has concluded or not. And when you're arguing and you're speaking from these emotional states, if you don't have an objective in mind outside of, as I stated earlier, getting them to understand, which basically means getting them to agree with you because of your insecurities, then you all are going to be going back and forth because you're both looking for the same thing. Go ahead. You wrote something down, so I'm eager to hear what that is.
I just was giggling because we're going back and forth, but I heard this great message the other day with Stephen Furtick, and he was talking about there are adages and old, not like urban myths, if you will, or just wives' tales or whatever. But one of them is never go to bed angry, like as a married couple, right? And he said, but sometimes you need a pause, like you need to go to sleep on it before you say something that you don't mean.
That's right.
But that has to be set on the foundation of, I'm assuming good intent, and I'm going to take a minute because I believe that I want this to work. Like people who argue past the point of no return and going in it for all or nothing are not coming into it that I want this to work. Because if you're going to play, pull out and just say everything that comes to your mind the way you want to say it, you might hurt this relationship beyond repair because you're not thinking, you're using your emotion. You got too far. You went too far.
You can't unsay what you said.
You can't unsay it. So you got to have some intention there. Like, if I'm in a relationship that matters, then I'm not going to take this to its natural end and say everything that feels good because I feel like I'm right and I have the right to say what I want to say, because that's not going into it trying to preserve or get to a reasonable win-win scenario. I just want to kill you, like, because I want to be right. Like, but that like you said, going back to your very first statement, is it really loving when you're going in and trying to humble somebody down to and it's perfectly, I thought, for honestly, whole life was like, don't go to bed angry, don't go to bed angry. And then for a second I went, you know what, you're right though. Is it really a problem if I know you're going to be there in the morning to say, hey, can we hold on for a second and have this conversation tomorrow? Because I just need a minute.
Yo, I mean, I don't know what you think giving her 3 days means, but that means I'm giving her 3 days to be
Which
angry.
means she went to bed angry.
Yo, you got 3. Go ahead and get yourself together. I'm not doing that. That is just too much energy.
But I think that don't go to bed angry does mean let's call a truce. But let's talk. Like, we agree that we can't finish this today.
Yeah. Let's table this topic for another time.
Mm-hmm. Which goes back to calm down. Just calm down.
Yeah. You need to. Yeah. we're not getting anywhere. We're definitely not getting anywhere with that. And then the last, which I've already shared this indirectly, but that's how I approach it in the first place. The last one is to respond to share, not to change the person's mind. And that,
what is
go ahead.
sharing? Because you say this often. You say, I'm just sharing just to share. I don't care what you think.
Yeah, I'm sharing my truth with you in regards to the matter, and what you choose to do with that is solely up to you.
Can you have your mind changed if you're sharing just to share? Have you ever been in a scenario where that sharing and the exchange resulted in a change of your position?
If anybody listening, if you go to one of the first few shows, it literally happened on our shows. When you said the Maya, remember how I said Maya Angelou was wrong? I have no problems. I always look to learn. If you follow my journey to being a teacher, I've been intentionally putting myself out there in hopes that someone does destroy my thought process, because the worst thing that I feel that I can do is share information that I'm trying to help persons who are in relationships find love and things of that nature, and ruin their relationships with what I share. So I consistently, up until this point, have been going out and going to the people that I know don't like my philosophies or don't believe in my philosophies and have the PhDs, in hopes that they can find some kind of hole in what it is that I'm saying, so that I can adjust my thought process or approach when it comes to counseling, coaching, or teaching. So I'm always looking and open for learning. I have no problems with being wrong. I have no problems with admitting I'm wrong. And people, again, they don't know what to do with it. And there's so many times where I've admitted that I'm wrong and they still want to go. I'm like, whoa, did you not hear me say?
Because you know what's interesting is that when, and I've tested this because he's my friend, is that he admits that he's wrong with the same passion that he admits that he's right. Like it's not like the emotion changes. That same tone of, I just share because I'm sharing. It's the same tone of, you're right. I agree. So you don't get the emotional satisfaction of, dang, I was wrong. You don't get that. You get, So if you're looking for some emotional validation, that's not always the indicator.
You know what?
Mind.
That is an aha moment for me. That is an aha moment for me, because you just helped me realize why people continue to go. Yeah, they keep going further when I say that I agree with them, because I guess, like you said, they look.
You didn't even no remorse, no regret. You didn't even just confess, dang man, I shouldn't have said that. You're like, you're right. I'll take that into consideration. You're like,
and that's exactly how I say, you know what? You got a good point. You're right.
And I have spent all this time, energy, and effort to get him there, and he's just like, and we'll actually stick to it. Like he meant it. Like it's the next time you have a conversation, it's like, yeah, that's totally different. Turn around 360. And you're like, but I didn't get the satisfaction.
But see, hey, you know what's so funny about that? That statement right there is evidence that what I just said robs people of winning an argument. To change an argument to a conversation kills the person that is trying to have an argument. It destroys their whole dynamic, their thought process. So if you want to win an argument, change it to a conversation.
The gut feeling of, yes, not going to get it.
That is empowering. It's empowering. To one, know yourself. Two, be willing to learn from other people. And again, it has to be a balance. You have to have confidence and love for self, but also humility. Enough humility to be able to learn from anybody and be willing to learn from anyone. And when you come to a place where your core is love, and your responses will be, okay, so all right, let me first gather my thoughts, because clearly this person loves me if you've chosen correctly. So what in the world are we arguing about? What is she trying to relay to me? What is he trying to relay to me? in this that is from a loving standpoint. So
I'll
like
tell you what
even
is interesting is that when you're arguing with a preconceived end and they say what you always wanted them to say, you can't hear it. They said, like, they agree with you and you're like, you so far left, they disagree with me? Because I'm not finished arguing yet.
exactly. It's crazy, and it just exposes what your intent was. It was not to show love. It was not to come together or grow in this particular moment. None of that, and which is not what love is. So you really have to be mindful of what your intent is behind your exchanges. You're communicating, your responses. You're conversing with another person. Like, you have to be mindful of that so that your approach is correct. And again, if that person loves you, you shouldn't have a problem with learning how it is that they feel that they're loving you through their exchange. And to go back what I was saying, what I was talking about earlier, how I can disagree but understand. So I know a lot of people, very close people, I'm going to say family members, that will, speaking of the lights on, they will have extravagant birthday parties for their loved ones, and a month later or 2 weeks later be evicted. Yeah, them eyes got big. I've seen it. Seen them play it out so many times. They're trying to show love. I'm gonna do this extravagant birthday party, birthday bash for my boo. We're gonna do all of this. They spend all of this money to show love and lose their place.
Values are in a different place, right? That's
priorities all jacked up. I'd rather have a home than a party. Party only lasts for however that time is, but I'd rather be able to come home later or be like, yo, we couldn't have a party this year, but we got this, I made you a meal or whatever, this little meal, or
it's
just again, exactly, this card or what have you. I wish I could have done more, but what I could have done, I decided to keep the lights on with. So like that, I can understand where you came from. You felt that they were so important that they should have this extravagant birthday party. I have parents that do it all the time. They're having these big birthday parties for a 1 or 2 year old, spending hundreds of dollars to make themselves feel good about a parent. You ask that baby the next day, what do they do for their birthday? They can't even speak yet.
It wasn't for the baby. It wasn't for the baby.
It wasn't for the baby. Exactly. So again, when you get to the place where you love yourself, you understand why and things of that nature, you don't need validation from external things and people. You're just trying to get you're a great mom from some other people who don't care about you and aren't even thinking about you. And I could give you examples after examples about this over and over again. It's a lot of people that are like, you ain't do nothing for your wife on Valentine's Day? Nope, sure didn't. Won't do nothing for my wife on Valentine's Day. Will never do anything for my wife on Valentine's Day. But ask my wife, does she feel that I love her, or does she know that I love her? Nah.
I mean, 3 days. 3 days from now, she will.
So I'm not looking for other people's approval. I'm doing me, which is how I got my wife, which is how we got to going on 15 years. Because I'm not thinking about y'all, thinking about her and what's best for her, my family, and I. So.
But isn't that the motivation for engaging in an exchange that is a little bit more calm? Is because you're trying to get to that quality of life. And I think that these are basic tools that get people to 15, 30, 50 years of marriage is how they communicate. Like what I expect. I'm easy to forgive because I know the intent. I'm not gonna argue, full out to get you to submission if that's not the end game. The end game is to walk side by side and have a decent quality of life.
And what's so interesting about that, I've yet to have a person that has encountered me or we've had an exchange where they leave upset or they feel that I don't agree with them or I quote unquote hurt their feelings that can articulate with confidence that I don't love them. I've never had that happen. Even the young men that I mentor, what have you, they're like, Brother Eddie, he made me do this, he made me do that. And I'd be like, raise your hand if you feel I don't love you. They cannot do it. They know where I come from with my correction, with my discipline, and anything of that nature. So to have
it's not hard to do when it's true, though.
Exactly.
It's not hard to be both strong, hard, and firm and loving when you actually are loving.
That's
not
exactly
trying
right.
to be loving. Just
That's good. That's good. Acting like versus being is two different things.
And you can't do that until you do the first part of the triangle, which is love me. I don't even know what love feels like until, because you know what's really interesting, and as I went through my journaling process, was you come to most conversations treating people the way you expect yourself to respond. So if you don't forgive yourself, or you're quick to judge, or you're you assume the other person is going to do what you do.
That's exactly right. That's why you have to be the first one to do it.
You have to be, but you can't even do that. Well, you do it because somebody told you at first until it feels right, and then it becomes natural, and then it's an authentic thing that tends to do the kinetic thing we were talking about, which is bring more love to you when we are love versus I'm trying to act like I'm doing the right thing. But
that's correct.
When you can, your first thought is, I wouldn't judge this person wrong, so let me say what I was going to say the way I was going to say it, because my intent is good. I'm not assuming that.
That's right.
It does elicit a different response.
Yep. And I've had people say, like, how can you say that? And I'm like, I say it because I know where it's coming from. So I'm not stressed about what they thought about it or how you felt about it, what I said or what have you, because if you've been in my circle long enough for me to even have this exchange, you know who I am, what I'm about. So that's the least of my worries or my concerns, and I don't have a problem sleeping at night after I've shared what it is that caused what needs to be said at that time. For those of you who don't know me or are working your way in it, I typically start with, so you want the truth or you want me to tell you? It's like the warning. That is the warning statement. If you meet me and you ask me something, I'm like, hey, I'll tell you right now, don't ask me if you don't want the truth. Do you want the truth?
And don't tell him nothing if you don't want him to ask you 8 questions after. Like,
don't. So that is your out.
Why are you doing that?
Let that be your sign. If you are looking to be my client or whatever, or will you become a client? If I started with, so do you want the truth? That is your out. You can either say no and we'll end it right there. But if you say yes, just be popping. It's a process. It is going to be a journey. It is going to be
calm down and just calm down and breathe when you get the reaction that you want to have. Is at 1,000. Just like bring it down a notch and go. So Edward, what were you really trying to say with that?
Yeah, most certainly.
Where are we trying to go? What's the end result? What's the goal?
Speaking of feeling uncomfortable when it comes to me, the No Love app probably in the next couple of weeks will be available via Android. I actually literally have had some Android persons that have been testing how close we are, and it is. And I have to tell people, I literally put that disclaimer in there. It is definitely a frustrating process. It's a game, but it's not a game because it's a simulation. And it's me condensing years of going through the process of dating to get to a place of a loving marriage. So there's descending and ascending from the dating to relationship to marriage. And you have zero control over the process. All you do is go through the experience so that you can learn indirectly how to fail and succeed at relationships through the game, so that you can apply what you learn through the experiences of the game in real life, so that you can expedite that process.
Game, a great interface, very easy, and it's kind of addictive because you're like, dang, I answered that question wrong. I should try that again. Just like you do in a real relationship, you're like, dang, I probably shouldn't have said that. Probably shouldn't have said that.
I remember when my wife and we first played it, and she got all the way to the marriage part before you get to the winning aspect of the game, and she landed on the fact that the person she was with cheated on her. And when you land on a place where the person cheats on you, you have to roll a die. And if you roll a 4 or more, y'all work it out, and you lose however many turns. If you roll 3 or less, you go back to single or have a divorce. So she rolled she rolled a 2. And she starts, well, this is ridiculous. You cheated on me. I said, wait a minute. This is a game. This is not me. I didn't do anything in the game. You got cheated on. This you're not with me right here on this game. But she was so mad that she got cheated on, and the roll of a die caused her to be divorced. And it's like, that's the reason why the game is set up that way, because if you cheat on someone or someone cheats on you, you don't know how that person is going to respond. You don't know how you're going to respond. So it's really a roll of a die. You don't know if you're going to forgive them or they're going to forgive you. So let's see what happens. And that's the kind of in-your-face type of situations and scenarios that you go through. I promise you, there's nothing that you can think of that this game will not speak to. And the counseling is embedded.
Emotions are tapped on. Like, all of your emotions get hit. Like the fear and the insecurity and the not sure what you're gonna decide. It's all played out in there. And the fun of it, like, that feels like I'm gonna do it.
Yep. So with that being said, we have to conclude this long show. I think we that was
making up for a whole month.
Yeah, we missed you all. So we had to make up for these past 3 weeks. I can't stress to you all how much I pray for you all, how much I ask for wisdom, guidance, and direction so that I can be a conduit for the information that has been given to me to share with you all. You all mean a lot to me, and you all are connected to me. So therefore, you are my family. So if you're connected to me, I will die before I stop trying to teach you how to experience peace and love and share it amongst one another, because ultimately it's going to come back to me anyway, since we are connected. So I have to take care of you in order for me to take care of myself. And for that, I take this very, very seriously. And I am dedicated to this journey. So if you're here, I will be here. Even if I take these little sabbaticals, I will be back. So don't think it's over. Just know that I may have had to make a priority decision, which is not hard for me when it comes to God, family, and business. But ultimately, I will get back to you all, and it's definitely with you all in mind. So with that being said, I truly appreciate your minds and time. Until we meet again, I think I've been from outside conversations. I think we might be talking about sex next week. I'm not saying that that's a definite, but we might have to talk about it might be the show next week. So just be on the lookout for the title.
Nothing.
For the title. So be on the lookout. She don't know nothing about it. She has 3 children like me. So we will be talking soon. It's either gonna be next week or probably a week or 2 after that. But we have to start talking about these taboo topics that we keep trying to push under the rug. People aren't doing it right. And if you're in a relationship and it's supposed to be a place or a thing that you're supposed to be enjoying, we got to get to a place where we're approaching that right. And that this is going to have to be the platform. So with that being, I got thumbs up and everything about that. So people are anticipating the topic.
Bury or burn.
Again, I appreciate your mind and time. Until we meet again, I love you all. Be safe, peace, and have a great rest of your week.